Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Donald Albin Blom. Donald Albin Blom was born in Minnesota on February 5, 1949. He was an American. Donald's early life was difficult, as he experienced frequent physical and emotional abuse from his father starting at a young age, which continued until his teenage years. At that time, Donald was drinking a lot of alcohol and showing signs of behavioral disorders. His behavioral issues escalated as he entered puberty. His actions also became more erratic. For example, he frequently skipped classes during his time at reform school in 10th grade. On May 26, 1999, a night shift clerk, Katie Poirier, was working alone at a convenience store located within a service station. After midnight, a customer called the police to report that the clerk had disappeared. Upon their arrival, police officers found the store to be empty. A review of the store's surveillance video revealed a large man leading Katie out by her neck around 11:11 and 40 seconds p.m. He was wearing jeans, a backwards baseball cap, and a New York Yankees jersey with the number 23 on the back. Katie appeared to have been forced out of the store. Police questioned Catherine Hannock, an employee at the nearby Subway restaurant, in connection with the incident. She reported seeing a man behaving suspiciously shortly before the Subway closed around 10 p.m. After closing, she drove home and coincidentally encountered the same man driving away from the area. Catherine described the man's vehicle as a black Ford F-150 pickup truck with an extended cab and white markings on the side. She observed the truck circling the maintenance area several times before entering Moose Lake and stopping in the parking lot of a local cafe. Notably, Katie's car was still in the parking lot when Catherine left work. A composite sketch of the kidnapper was created based on that customer description and partial surveillance footage. The sketch depicted a man with long blonde hair, approximately 25 years old. This image was then broadcast on local television and published in newspapers, along with a plea for information from the public. As investigators gathered clues, hundreds of volunteers from around the state converged on the wooded area surrounding the station to search for Katie Poirier. Despite the use of service dogs and helicopters, no signs of her were found. Posters of the missing girl flooded local newspapers and billboards, making it a highly publicized case. Meanwhile, authorities checked in the nearby sex offender facility. Upon verifying that all inmates were present at the time of the incident, police focused on tracking down the suspect's vehicle using its license plate number. They found the owner of that car, which belonged to Donald Blom, but unfortunately, his truck was a different color than the one they were looking for. On June 6, 1999, the official search for Katie was terminated without success. However, many volunteers did not give up hope and continued looking. They believe there will be someone with information that will help the investigation. The fact that the abduction occurred in a store with a security camera led investigators to question whether the perpetrator was foolishly reckless or remarkably bold in carrying out their actions. Although the case remains unsolved, searchers continue to hold out hope that the perpetrator will eventually make another mistake that will lead to their capture. The search team narrowed their investigation to the neighborhood, as the perpetrator seemed to be familiar with the area. Given the possibility that the perpetrator visited the store multiple times before the crime, it's likely that someone in the neighborhood had seen him previously. A search headquarters was established at the Lutheran Church in Moose Lake, where staff members processed leads and volunteers distributed flyers with Katie's description. Maps on the wall highlighted areas already searched, marked with large crosses. Despite these extensive efforts, Katie remained missing. A new theory emerged, suggesting that the kidnapper might be a sports enthusiast, possibly a fan of the New York Yankees. And the police enlisted the help of a sports figure to aid in the search. Unfortunately, after 2 weeks, there were still no developments. The police Minnesota enlisted the help of Paul Molitor, Minnesota Twins legend, to create a public service announcement. The announcement reached a wide audience across the state, including Darryl Brown, an employee at the Minnesota Veterans Home. Darryl recognized a coworker, Donald Hutchinson, who matched the suspect's description and had recently been acting suspiciously. Donald Hutchinson had stopped driving his black pickup truck, had been absent from work the day after the abduction, and had recently gotten a haircut. As investigators looked into Donald Hutchinson, they discovered that his real name was Albin Blom. Further investigation revealed that he owned a black pickup truck hidden in his garage, as well as owned a plot of land near the location where Katie was last seen in Moose Lake. It was also discovered that he had a history of sex crimes, including the kidnapping of young girls, similar to Katie. With this information, detectives quickly obtained a search warrant. Detectives then tracked down Donald, finding him with his family at a campground 140 miles from Richfield. Early one morning, law enforcement agents arrived at Donald's residence to ask him questions. Following a thorough inspection, it was discovered that Donald had purchased a plot of land in Moose Lake about 2 years prior. His neighbors confirmed that he had visited the property frequently before Katie's disappearance, but then he not then. Donald's supervisor at the veteran home where he worked stated that he was unaware of Donald's past convictions because Donald used a different name, Donald Hutchinson, at work. The supervisor added that Donald kept to himself and didn't socialize much. After his arrest, Albin Blom was initially cooperative and friendly, but he later refused to testify and requested a lawyer. During this time, authorities conducted several searches. Although numerous items were seized from Donald's residence, but officials refused to disclose what they were or how they related to the investigation. A second search was carried out on Donald's 20-acre property in Moose Lake, with over 100 National Guard members and several hundred volunteers participating. The search party trekked several miles into the woods surrounding Donald's property, but were forced to stop as night fell. The search resumed the next morning, and Katie's mother expressed her optimism that her daughter would be found alive. While some held on to the hope that Katie was being held against her will, the sheriff was less hopeful. On the second day of the search, investigators have found an important clue. Bone fragments were found in the ashes of a fire pit on Donald's property. They sent the remains to a lab for further analysis. The lab results shocked everyone. The remains were identified as bone fragments. A tooth found in the ashes was sent to dental specialists for examination. Certified forensic dentist, Dr. Norlander conducted a thorough examination of the tooth. However, she knew that any DNA in the tooth's pulp would have been destroyed due to the conditions under which it was extracted. As a result, she had to use alternative methods. During her examination, Dr. Norlander discovered something that resembled a dental filling. This finding confirmed that the tooth was human and allowed her to investigate whether it could have belonged to Katie. Dental fillings consist of two components, an organic matrix and an inorganic filler. When exposed to heat, the organic matrix burns away, leaving behind particles of the inorganic filler. The analyst can identify a specific brand or group of brands based on the type of filling used. Manufacturers use various types of fillers, up to 50 different kinds, which are easily visible on dental X-rays. A comparison was made between the filling found in the tooth from Donald's fire pit and those used for Katie, revealing a matching composition. Furthermore, researchers determined that it was a specific tooth, number 18, belonging to a young woman. Given the similarities, it was highly likely that the tooth belonged to Katie rather than someone else. A crucial question still needs to be addressed: why was the perpetrator released from prison despite having kidnapped 7 girls? A more effective justice system may have prevented Katie's tragic fate. Instead, the perpetrator, Donald, changed his name and assumed a new identity, hiding his dark past and continuing to cause harm. In Katie Poirier's case, Donald was charged with kidnapping and illegal possession of a weapon, a federal offense. Initially, he rejected a plea agreement, but later changed his mind and agreed to testify under the condition that he be allowed to call home. On September 8, Donald made a 2.5-hour confession. According to his testimony, on May 26, 1999, he went fishing and returned home to Richfield. However, he later drove back to his Moose Lake home, stopping to buy liquor and have a beer at a bar along the way. It was there that he saw Katie, grabbed her, and forced her into his pickup truck without knowing her. Donald then drove Katie to his motor home. He explained that he didn't fully understand his motivations for the actions he took, but stated that he strangled Katie from behind, which lasted approximately 20 minutes. He denied committing any other assault. After confirming she was dead, he positioned her body in a fetal position in a fire pit and used wood and paper in an attempt to burn the remains. However, his testimony conflicted with the video camera footage and evidence found in the burn pit. Specifically, Donald claimed Katie repeatedly asked him to release her, but she didn't struggle until he began choking her. He asserted that he used only his bare hands to kill her. Furthermore, his claim of using wood and paper to burn the remains to ashes was considered unfeasible. Wood and paper alone could not have reached a high enough temperature to turn a human body to ashes. When questioned further, Blom acknowledged that his actions didn't make sense, and he was unable to provide a clear motive for his actions. After the interview, Donald contacted 2 local television stations to inform them of his actions and request that they leave his family in peace. The plea deal also included the return of several properties to his wife Amy Blom, including a plot of land, their home in Richfield, and the family vehicle. However, the news of Donald's confession was extremely distressing for the Katie family, who had held on to the hope that she was still alive. Donald asserts that he killed and cremated Katie on impulse, without any clear motive. But soon, Donald retracted his testimony, saying that his initial confession was false and induced by the pressures of solitary confinement and medication he was taking at the time. According to Donald, the isolation and medication caused him to hallucinate, leading him to believe that confessing would be the only way out of his situation. Donald then stated that he didn't know what he was saying. As a result, the initial plea deal was cancelled, and lawyers for both sides began preparing for the trial. Donald Blom's trial began in June 2000 and jury selection took 5 weeks to complete. The trial then lasted for another 5 weeks, with over 50 witnesses, including several key ones, testifying. Carlton County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Thomas Perler opened the case. Among the early witnesses was Donald's own brother, who revealed that he had given their family a box of used clothes, including a New York Yankees jersey. This contradicted Donald's previous statement that he had never owned such a shirt. 2 women who were kidnapped by Donald in 1983 also testified, describing his behavior towards them. The jury gained further insight into Donald's motives when they realized that 2 young girls that he kidnapped bore a resemblance to Katie. Furthermore, forensic experts analyzed a partial tooth found at the scene and confirmed that it matched Katie's age, gender, and dental records. Dr. Ann Norlander initially questioned whether the object was a tooth, but after conducting further tests, she testified in court with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the tooth belonged to Katie's. Her conclusion was largely based on the discovery of specific chemicals in the filling material. Additional evidence against Donald included a surveillance video from another store, taken in May, which showed him with blonde tips in the time of the kidnapping. This detail was confirmed by his barber and made him appear younger. The most crucial piece of evidence emerged when Donald confessed and the judge permitted Donald's statement to be considered as part of the case. As this evidence was presented, the courtroom fell silent, except for the quiet sobbing of Katie's relatives. It seemed clear that the evidence against Donald was mounting. Rodney Broden, the lead defense attorney, began calling witnesses on August 7th. The first witness he called was Albin Blom. Amy testified that her husband was at home on the night Katie disappeared. Amy remembered this detail because she was concerned that her husband's criminal record might make him a suspect. Later, she recalled the specifics of Donald's whereabouts that night. He had returned home around 9:30 p.m. and they had already gone to bed. When she woke up the next morning, she found that he had already made coffee, further confirming that he was at home. Amy further testified that she was treated poorly by the police during their questioning. She alleged that they threatened to take her children away from her if she did not answer their questions as they wanted. Amy described their behavior as bullying and stated they called she a liar. During the trial, Amy testified that she had never seen Donald's brother give Donald a baseball jersey, and he had never worn one, as far as she knew. Meanwhile, Donald was visibly emotional, crying and wiping away tears. When Donald took the stand to defend himself, he denied kidnapping Katie Poirier under oath. However, he had previously admitted to the crime during the investigation. During his testimony, which lasted over 3 hours, Donald exhibited emotional turmoil, frequently speaking and crying. He claimed that his life was unraveling and that he felt unwell around the time of the crime. Donald also mentioned that his wife, Amy, was considering leaving him due to the media attention. This led Donald to try a new tactic. In an attempt to gain the jury's sympathy and ultimately secure his release from jail, he portrayed himself as the victim. Although he initially confessed to the crime, he later took back his statement. Donald changed his story, claiming that he was at home with his wife, who had previously testified to the same, on the night of the crime, despite having gone fishing at Moose Lake earlier. He arrived home before 10 p.m. well before the time Katie was taken. During cross-examination, Donald was forced to confront the inconsistencies in his initial statements to the police. His appearance in court ultimately did not help his case. Donald came across to many as someone who complained excessively and was trying to avoid taking responsibility for his actions. After the questioning concluded, Donald Blom appeared frustrated. He turned to the judge, uttered a profanity, and requested permission to make a single statement, but was denied. Then, the case went to the jury, who deliberated for 10 hours, 3 of which spent reviewing the taped confessions. Ultimately, they returned a guilty verdict, and Donald Blom was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Donald Blom maintained that his case was not hopeless and was confident that he would eventually be cleared of the charges. He strongly denied any involvement in the crime, insisting that he had not killed anyone. Despite his conviction, he believed he had a solid foundation for an appeal, but the appeals court ultimately upheld his conviction in a lengthy 81-page ruling issued in 2004. Although his trial was imperfect, the judges concluded that it had been fundamentally fair, and therefore saw no justification for overturning the conviction or ordering a new trial. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Chris Coleman. Chris Coleman was born March 20, 1977. He is a former military. Chris Coleman met his future wife Sherry while he was serving in the Marine Corps, and she was in the United States Air Force. For Sherry, it was love at first sight. She immediately knew Chris was the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. Just a few months later, Sherry became pregnant with their first child, Garrett. Both devout Christians, Chris and Sherry decided to get married before Garrett was born. Chris called his father, Ronald Coleman, to tell him about the marriage and the upcoming baby. Although surprised, Ronald was delighted to learn that Sherry was pregnant. After Garrett was born, Chris and Sherry quickly had a second son, Gavin. Gavin had an energetic personality, while Garrett was calmer, like his father Chris. Both boys were happy and well-behaved. Sherry loved her sons dearly and was protective of them. Chris was a wonderful father, and they built a happy family. The family often laughed, played together, and cherished every moment with their sons. After leaving the military, the Coleman family moved to Waterloo, Illinois, a small town. They lived in an upscale neighborhood thanks to Chris's new job. He became the director of security for Joyce Meyer, a famous televangelist and CEO of one of the largest Christian evangelical ministries in the world. However, Joyce Meyer's multi-million-dollar income and lavish lifestyle caused controversy. Some critics claimed that she was a greedy con artist who preyed on the fears of her followers. They argued that her wealth and lavish lifestyle contradicted the religious teachings she preached. Chris was Joyce's personal bodyguard and protector. His main job was to monitor and prevent hate mail and threats sent to Joyce's church. These letters often threatened Joyce's life, with the sender claiming to find and harm her. Joyce's ministry, based in St. Louis, Missouri, hired Chris as a bodyguard. The job paid him $100,000 a year, providing financial stability for his family. In addition to his security duties, Chris often accompanied Joyce on international trips. He was always by her side to ensure her safety. However, this meant that Chris was away from home for long periods of time. According to Sherry, one year Chris worked for Joyce and was away for 260 days. This was stressful for her because her two sons, Garrett and Gavin, missed their father very much. The boys did not like it when their father was away and would mark the days on their calendars to count down the days until he returned. They kept looking at the calendar, eagerly awaiting the day he would return. When Chris returned home, he was away again shortly thereafter. Chris's frequent absences caused a lot of stress in his marriage to Sherry. Sherry was tired of doing everything by herself, playing both mother and father. She felt overwhelmed and underappreciated. This continued to have a negative impact on their relationship. In October 2008, Chris visited Tampa, Florida, where Sherry had attended high school. Before the trip, Sherry contacted her old friend Tara Lintz and asked her to look after Chris while he was in town. After arriving and settling in, Chris reached out to Tara. They decided to meet up and Tara enthusiastically showed Chris around Tampa. At around 11 p.m. on November 14, 2008, Chris received a disturbing email. The email was sent from destroychris@gmail.com, and the subject and content were alarming. The letter demanded that Chris stop working for Joyce Meyer or he and his family would be killed. In the following days, several similar threatening emails were sent from the same address, repeating the threat and giving specific times when his family would be attacked. Notably, the sender of these emails seemed to know Chris's schedule, even his travel plans abroad. Chris informed Sherry of the threatening emails he had received and reported them to the local police the following Monday. He explained that he was often away from home due to his work with Joyce Meyer. The police offered to patrol the area while Chris was away. Despite the increased police patrols, Sherry remained concerned about her family's safety. She invited a friend to stay with her while Chris was away because she felt unsafe being home alone. Sherry emphasized that she was serious about protecting her family and would do whatever it took. To prove her seriousness, Sherry revealed to her friend that she had a gun. She even gave instructions on how to use the gun in case someone broke into the house while she was away. 2 months after the Coleman family began receiving the death threats, a mysterious letter appeared in their mailbox. The letter was delivered directly to them, with no identifying mark on the sender. The message was written in bold letters. The letter contains that, "Renounce your God in public," or, "There will be no more chances. Time is running out for you and your family." The threat was serious and clear. It showed that if the Coleman family did not comply, they would face dangerous consequences. Sherry was extremely frightened when she received this threatening message. The invasion of her private space and the direct threat to herself and her family made her feel extremely anxious throughout the following period. Sherry's fear increased, as the letter served as a warning of the danger lurking around. After receiving the death threat, Chris and Sherry Coleman decided to increase security measures to protect their family. In an effort to protect their family, Chris installed security cameras around the house. These cameras recorded continuously and streamed live to a monitor in the basement office. The footage was stored on a digital recorder, creating a permanent record. Chris hoped that this system would help him identify the person threatening his family. After Chris installed security cameras outside the house, the threats against the Coleman family stopped. Life for Chris, Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin gradually returned to normal. By April 2009, things had improved dramatically. Sherry told everyone that she felt her marriage was better and was determined to keep it that way. She expressed relief that the death threats had stopped and that she was happy with her life. Her hopes were quickly dashed when a new letter arrived at the Coleman home. This time, the content of the letter was more serious, warning that the worst was about to happen to her. Sherry's husband, Chris, was concerned about the contents of the letter. He decided to check the security camera footage from the night before. To his surprise, he spotted a suspicious figure in the footage, but could not identify the person. This new incident once again raised Sherry's fears and concerns about the safety of her and her children. She lived in constant fear of what might happen. The sense of security she had felt when the threats had subsided was gone. Now, Sherry felt as if her worst nightmare was about to come true. Local police stepped up their efforts to protect the Coleman family from the increasingly serious threats. Justin Barlow, a detective sergeant with the nearby Columbia City Police Department and a neighbor of the Coleman family, took a special interest in the case. Detective Justin took the initiative to call Chris Coleman. During the call, Justin said he had noticed that Chris was often away from home for work. The detective offered his assistance and provided his cell phone number so that Chris could contact him if he needed help or had any concerns. Detective Justin Barlow lived across the street from the Colemans and had installed a surveillance camera at their entrance. He assured Chris Coleman that he could respond faster than the police in an emergency because he lived nearby. For weeks, Justin's camera recorded the Colemans as they went about their daily routines, but failed to detect who had left the death threat. Despite Detective Justin's efforts to investigate, the videos provided no clues or information about the sender of the mysterious messages. On the morning of May 5, 2009, Chris arrived at the gym at 5:45. About an hour after leaving the gym, he called home to check on Sherry and her sons who were awake and ready for school. However, no one answered. Chris called his neighbor, Detective Justin Barlow. At 6:45 a.m. Detective Justin prepared the necessary items such as weapons, handcuffs, flashlights, and radios before going to the Coleman house. While waiting for backup from another unit, he decided to contact Sherry to check on the situation. With a mixture of anticipation and anxiety, Detective Justin approached the Coleman house and knocked loudly, hoping someone would answer. When he arrived, Detective Justin felt uneasy by the suspicious silence that pervaded the house. The lights were off and there was no sign of movement inside, which only added to his anxiety. A few minutes later, a police cruiser arrived to assist. One officer was assigned to check the back of the house, trying to look through the windows or back door for any sign of Sherry and the boys. They discovered signs of forced entry into the basement. This discovery made Detective Justin concerned for the safety of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin, as there might be someone in danger inside the house. They decided to enter the Coleman home through the basement to investigate. When the officers announced their presence, no one answered. They conducted a thorough search of the basement and discovered a disconnected video cable at the computer desk. This led them to the conclusion that the security camera's video recorder had been removed. They left the basement and went up the stairs of the Coleman home. As they moved, they began to smell a strong odor of spray paint. The odor became stronger as they approached the main floor of the home. When they reached the upper floor, they found the walls spray-painted with several offensive messages directed at Chris and Sherry's family. 13 minutes after the call ended, Chris returned home from the gym. Detective Justin asked Chris to stand outside while they searched the home. Chris complied, not asking questions or trying to get in, but just sitting quietly on the porch. Shortly thereafter, a third officer arrived. All three officers were aware of the urgent task of searching the remaining rooms of the house for Sherry and the boys. Upon reaching the second floor of the Coleman home, Detective Justin entered the bedroom of Garrett, the eldest son in the family. Initially, Garrett appeared to be sleeping. However, after a closer examination, the detective discovered that Garrett was dead. His body showed no signs of life and was cold. There were strangulation marks on Garrett's neck, indicating that he had been murdered. The detective was shocked to find Garrett's lifeless body. In the next room, another officer checked Gavin and was horrified to find that the boy was also dead. Both brothers had signs of strangulation. The killer also left an obscene message painted on the bed sheets, adding to the horror of the scene. Meanwhile, an officer entered the master bedroom and witnessed a horrifying scene. Sherry was lying motionless on the bed, dead like her sons. Her hair obscured her face. The police determined that Sherry had been murdered. When they examined the room, they found numerous bruises on Sherry's body. These injuries indicated that she had fought back, defended herself, and tried to protect her sons before she was killed. Detective Justin and the officers had just discovered the bodies of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin. At that time, Chris was waiting outside, hoping to hear news about his family. Detective Justin was forced to inform Chris of the heartbreaking news that his entire family had been murdered. Hearing the news, Chris was completely devastated and extremely distressed by this unbearable news. Detective Justin took Chris aside to give him some privacy to process the information he had just received. As the situation took in, Chris had a very strong reaction. He felt nauseous and his body felt like it was collapsing. Chris curled up into a ball, unable to control his emotions. He was completely overwhelmed by the shock and could not believe that his family had been kidnapped in such a brutal way. In a moment of desperation, Chris tried his best to contact his father, Ronald. He called and informed him that something had happened to Sherry and the boys. As soon as he received the news, Ronald realized that Chris was in a state of shock. He could not believe that such a tragedy had happened to his family. News of the gruesome murders involving Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin quickly spread throughout the Waterloo, Illinois community where the Coleman family lived. When the neighbors woke up to hear the terrible news, they were all devastated and confused. The Coleman family was once considered a model American family, with two sons, Garrett and Gavin, who were cute and loved by everyone. A neighbor shared that everyone wished their children were like Garrett and Gavin because they were always polite and kind-hearted. Sherry's family could not accept the brutality of this murder. After discovering his wife and two sons murdered, Chris was taken to a nearby police station for questioning. Justin asked Chris to explain the case. Chris expressed deep remorse for leaving Sherry and the children home alone while he went to exercise. During an interview with Justin, Chris claimed that he did not know who might have killed his family. However, the detective noticed some suspicious points in Chris's behavior. Most notably, Chris did not ask about how his wife and sons were murdered. This lack of interest struck the detective as odd, especially given the severity of the case. It suggested that Chris may not really want to know the details of his family's deaths. During the interview, Justin noticed that Chris tried to hide the scratches on his arms. Despite the warmth of the room, Chris asked for a blanket to cover the wound. This alarmed Justin, as he knew that Chris's wife, Sherry, had put up a fight before she was murdered. When the detective asked about the source of the scratches, Chris explained that he had gotten the scratches while installing a satellite dish the day before. During his interview with detectives at the police station, Chris adamantly denied having an affair. However, he did admit to having a close friend, Tara Lintz, a Florida cocktail bartender and high school classmate of his wife's. Chris admitted that his wife would not approve of them talking to each other. However, he insisted that he had no intention of leaving his wife for Tara and said he would never betray his family like that. The investigation took a turn when a detective contacted Tara in Florida. Tara revealed that she and Chris were not just friends, but had been having an extramarital affair since November 2008. She provided police with her cell phone and laptop, which contained evidence such as emails, intimate photos, and videos that she and Chris exchanged during the relationship. When confronted with this information, Chris admitted that he saw Tara more often than he had initially told detectives. A detailed investigation revealed that Chris and Tara had a secret plan to meet at places where Chris worked for Joyce Meyer. They often chose exotic locations such as Hawaii to have private time away from their families. Chris argued that his relationship with Tara was not an affair, as he believed that an affair required a deeper commitment. However, detectives found important information on Tara's phone and computer. She had a calendar with her wedding date and planned vacations, suggesting that she believed Chris would leave his family for her. This evidence made detectives skeptical of Chris's testimony, as it contradicted his claim that their relationship was not serious. Chris's father, Ronald, was shocked to learn that his son was having an affair with Tara. However, he insisted that the relationship had nothing to do with the murder of Chris's wife and son. Ronald described Chris as a gentle, quiet person with no violent tendencies. He believed his son could not have committed such a serious crime. Although detectives believed that Chris' relationship with Tara could have been a motive for the murder, the initial investigation did not find enough evidence to charge him. As a result, after 6 hours of questioning, Chris was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. Tara was linked to the murders of Sherry, Garrett and Gavin Coleman, but was later ruled out as a suspect when police confirmed that she was in Florida at the time of the family's murder on May 5, 2009. The case led to the largest investigation in Illinois history. A task force of 25 detectives was established, working 20 hours a day for 15 days with the assistance of specialists. The main focus of the investigation was to trace the source of the threatening emails sent to Chris Coleman. Police scrutinized every threatening email Joyce Meyer Ministries had received over the past year, investigating across the country. All of the people who sent emails to the Joyce Meyer Ministry were tracked down and questioned, but none of them were linked to Coleman's murder. A team of computer experts was called in to investigate the Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin murders. Detectives sought their help in the hopes of finding digital evidence of the crimes. The team began by analyzing the diaris@gmail.com email account. During their investigation, they discovered that the email address had been created on November 14, 2008, just days before the first email was sent. A shocking discovery was that the death threats sent to Chris Coleman's family actually came from Chris's own IP address. Investigators continued to investigate by carefully analyzing the spray paint at the scene and Christopher Coleman's handwriting. They took photos of the spray paint and collected samples of Christopher Coleman's handwriting as evidence. These samples were sent to a handwriting expert. After comparing them, the expert concluded that the handwriting matched the spray paint. From there, investigators determined that Christopher Coleman was the person who wrote the words on the wall of his home on the day of the murder. Chemical analysis revealed that the spray paint at the crime scene was Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red. A detective contacted the manager of the spray paint store after learning that Chris Coleman had made a purchase there a few days before his family was murdered. The manager confirmed that Chris had purchased the same Rust-Oleum Candy Apple Red spray paint. This finding was significant because it linked Chris Coleman to the paint used at the crime scene. The time of death played a key role in the investigation. Chris initially told police that he left home at 5:45 a.m. on May 5, 2009, the morning his family was murdered. However, an autopsy revealed that Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin were killed around 3 a.m. This indicated that Chris was still home when his family was murdered, contradicting his initial statement. 2 weeks after the bodies were discovered, Chris was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Prosecutors argued that Chris was motivated by greed, selfishness, and narcissism. It appeared that Chris wanted to start a new life, and his family became an obstacle. In April 2011, Chris was put on trial for the murders of his wife Sherry and sons Garrett and Gavin. Prosecutors told the jury that Chris killed his family because he wanted to be with his lover, Tara Lintz. However, he could not divorce Sherry because he feared losing his high-paying job at Joyce Meyer Ministries, an organization that did not accept divorces. During the trial, Chris's defense attorney argued that his client was innocent of the family murders. They alleged that an intruder entered the home and killed the family on May 5, 2009. However, 2 years after the murders of Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin, Chris was convicted of murder. The judge sentenced Chris to life in prison without parole, rather than the death penalty. This decision was made because the state of Illinois had abolished the death penalty, which was expected to take effect just months after the case. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Lee. Annie Lee was born on July 3, 1985, in San Jose, California, to Vivian Van Lee and Hogan Lee, Vietnamese immigrants. As an only child, Annie demonstrated exceptional intelligence and talent from an early age, consistently excelling in her studies and being considered the top student in her school. Annie's favorite subjects were chemistry and biology. Her teachers believed she had a bright future in science, with some even predicting she might one day win a Nobel Prize. Throughout her school years, Annie actively participated in scientific conferences, where her work garnered various awards and recognition. As a high school student, she secured a $65,000 scholarship to study at any U.S. university. Annie chose the University of Rochester in New York, where she studied cellular development biology and medical anthropology. She later enrolled in Yale University's graduate school, working in a scientific laboratory and pursuing a doctoral degree in chemistry and biology. Annie's dissertation focused on the study of diseases caused by metabolic disorders. During her time working in the laboratory, she gained much research knowledge, which contributed to the treatment of diabetes and certain types of cancer. Annie, a student at the University of Rochester in New York, while pursuing her studies, met Jonathan Widowski, a fellow student and promising scientist. The two quickly dating, and their parents were pleased with their relationship. After graduating, Annie moved to New Haven, Connecticut, to attend Yale, while Jonathan chose to pursue his studies at Columbia University in New York. Despite the distance, the couple maintained their romance, visiting each other every weekend and making plans for their future. In the summer of 2009, Jonathan proposed to Annie with a beautiful diamond ring, and she happily accepted. They set their wedding date for Sunday, September 13, 2009. Initially, they only shared the news with their parents and close friends, keeping their colleagues in the dark. It wasn't until a week before the wedding, on September 6, that Annie sent out emails to friends and colleagues, announcing their upcoming marriage and a wedding invitation. The day after, the news spread rapidly throughout the department and the lab where Annie worked, becoming the most discussed topic. Annie and her fiancé had planned a wedding ceremony on Long Island, followed by a honeymoon at a luxurious resort in Greece. A few months before she went missing, Annie had written an article for the university publication, where she cautioned students about potential dangers and provided safety tips for when they were off campus. However, despite being aware of the risks, Annie herself fell victim to an unexpected tragedy at her workplace. On Tuesday, September 8, Annie left her university dormitory, where she shared a room with 3 friends, and headed to the University Medical Center laboratory, where she worked. The laboratory building, located on Amistad Street, has restricted access and requires a pass and special key card for entry and movement within the premises. A CCTV camera at the entrance captured Annie entering the building around 10 o'clock that morning. She went to her office, changed her clothes, stored her personal belongings, put on a medical coat, locked the door, and proceeded to the biolab. However, Annie never returned to her office that day and seemed to vanish in the corridors. Unfortunately, no one ever saw her alive again. On the evening Annie went missing, her dormitory neighbors were the first to discover the incident. They had grown accustomed to Annie's punctual nature, as she usually returned home at the same time every day. However, as midnight approached and she failed to return, her friends began to worry. Their concerns deepened when they were unable to reach Annie on her phone. Deciding to take action, they reported her disappearance to the police. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Annie's parents and fiancé had also been unable to contact her that night. Initially, they had assumed she was working late due to her heavy workload and would call them back when she was available. When the police arrived, they weren't too worried. They had heard what had happened and assumed that Annie was nervous before the wedding and needed time to calm down. However, their opinion quickly changed after examining Annie's office and reviewing the CCTV footage. They also tracked her movements within the building using her key card. The evidence revealed that Annie had entered the building in the morning but never exited. Her personal belongings, including her clothes, bag, wallet, and cell phone, were still in her office. Despite an extensive search, no sign of Annie was found, leaving behind only the unsettling feeling that she had vanished into thin. The disappearance of Annie Lee, a graduate student, led to an extensive investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Those who knew Annie personally described her as intelligent, kind, cheerful, and energetic, with no known enemies. Her family and fiancé anxiously waited for news, hope she will return safely. However, detectives were less optimistic, concluding that it was likely she was no longer alive. The laboratory building, crime scene, was placed under guard, and the list of suspects was narrowed down to staff and students with authorized access. The university atmosphere was tense because everyone realized that the killer might be somewhere nearby. Annie's fiancé, Jonathan, who had flown in from another state, was questioned but had a solid alibi. Despite this, he was visibly shaken and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, deeply concerned about Annie's disappearance. Among the suspects, one is Annie's teacher. On the day she disappeared, he canceled his lectures for unknown reasons and had no alibi. Although his was initially questioned, after the police still believed the perpetrator was likely someone from Yale University's laboratory, either a student, faculty member, or staff. A disturbing detect was found on September 12, providing the first evidence that Annie was no longer alive. A medical coat stained with blood was discovered hidden behind a false ceiling in an auxiliary room of a building. The coat did not belong to Annie, but further examination revealed that the blood on it was indeed hers. On September 13, the body Annie was found in a narrow pipeline on the technical floor of the laboratory. The day she was supposed to get married and leave for her honeymoon in Greece. Her petite stature and fragile build made it easier for her killer to stuff her body into the small space. A service dog's keen sense of smell helped the police locate Annie's body. The location where her body was hidden suggested that the killer was familiar with the laboratory's layout. It was a spot that was hard to access, making it a clever yet sinister choice for concealing the crime. Annie's body showed severe signs of trauma. Most of her ribs were broken, her limbs were damaged, and several teeth were knocked out. However, according to the pathologists, the cause of death was mechanical asphyxia, which meant that Annie was severely beaten and then strangled. A further examination revealed that Annie's clothes had traces of seminal fluid. But it was concluded that she had not been raped. A few days before Annie's body was discovered, police attention was initially drawn to Raymond J. Clark III, a young laboratory technician. Raymond claimed to have seen Annie leave the building without her belongings, implying she intended to return. However, his testimony aroused suspicion from the police. Following the discovery of Annie's body, Raymond became the primary suspect. They collected DNA samples from Raymond and asked him not to leave the country until the investigation was completed. On September 17th, Raymond was arrested. Forensic examination results showed that his semen was found on Annie's clothes. And his robe, stained with Annie's blood, was discovered hidden in the suspended ceiling. Additionally, Raymond had suspicious bruises on his body, suggesting that Annie had fiercely defended herself before her death. Despite the incriminating evidence, Raymond denied any involvement in the crime. Further investigation showed that Raymond was a very hot-tempered person, easily angered and often had workplace conflicts. He frequently engaged in verbal altercations with colleagues and had a reputation for being cruel, having physically abused women he had relationships with in the past. Raymond did not excel academically, but he stood out as a promising athlete in school. He is known for his handsome looks and has a strong appeal to women. However, he was unable to get into university due to poor grades. Fortunately, with the help of some relatives, Raymond secured a job at a laboratory, starting as a janitor and eventually working his way up to become a technician. During this time, Raymond was in a relationship with a woman named Jessica Del Rocco. However, their relationship was tumultuous, and Jessica later testified against Raymond in court. She described him as controlling, stating that he would constantly monitor her activities, read her messages, and dictate what she could do and couldn't do. He would also become violent when they disagreed. And Jessica claimed that he would physically abuse her. After one particularly brutal incident, Jessica fled from Raymond. She temporarily relocated to another state to escape his abuse. Then Raymond had been in a relationship with Jennifer Radko, a Yale University student, for the past year. Jennifer ignored rumors about his alleged infidelity with students and lab employees. She accepted his marriage proposal, and they proceeding with wedding preparations. The motive behind the murder remains unclear, even after he fully admitted his guilt. He never revealed his motive, even after admitting to the crime. Initially, it was thought that the murder was related to a workplace conflict. Annie was conducting experiments on laboratory mice to study the effectiveness of enzymes in treating cancer, diabetes, and other diseases. Raymond, who considered the laboratory his domain, was in charge of the mice. Two theories emerged about the incident leading to the murder. The first theory suggests that Raymond might have had a conflict with Annie. On the day of the murder, Annie stayed late in the laboratory and entered the area where experimental animals were kept. Raymond, who had cleaned the area, go in there too. The confrontation could have intensified into a physical altercation, which in turn could have led to Annie being strangled by Raymond a fit of rage. A second theory proposes that Raymond had feelings for Annie, but she rejected his advances. Raymond, unaccustomed to rejection, was hurt by her refusal. When he learned about her upcoming wedding on September 7th, Raymond was completely overcome by intense feelings of jealousy. The next day, when he was alone with Annie in the laboratory, he attacked her, beating and attempting to rape her, then ultimately strangling her. This theory explains the appearance of seminal fluid on Annie's clothes. The case gained widespread media attention from the start. The victim was a promising young scientist, and the crime was committed on campus. Raymond first appeared in court in Connecticut on October 6, 2009, where he denied any involvement in the murder and the charges against him. The hearing was postponed multiple times to allow for the collection of all evidence and materials. It was discovered that Raymond had spent at least an hour with Annie in the laboratory, during which the murder took place. In an attempt to mislead investigators, Raymond used his key card over 50 times at various locations, eventually making his way to the technical floor. There, he spent around 15 minutes hiding the body in the wall. Raymond then activated the fire alarm, which forced the staff to evacuate the building, providing him with an opportunity to blend in and avoid suspicion. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the pocket of a robe found hidden under a false ceiling, a green ballpoint pen. Further examination revealed that Raymond had used this pen to sign his name in various work logs on the same day. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Raymond scrubbing specific areas of the lab floor repeatedly over the next few days. Despite the floor appearing clean, he also disposed of the cleaning equipment and a pack of tissues with small brown stains, resembling blood splatters, in a trash can. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the tissues contained Annie's blood, indicating that Raymond had made a thorough attempt to eliminate any evidence. In February 2011, Clark agreed to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. At the court hearing on March 17, 2011, he pleaded guilty to murder and attempted rape and apologized to Tanny's parents and fiancé. However, Raymond never revealed the details of the incident leading up to the murder or his motivation for the crime. As a result, he was sentenced to 44 years in prison. Raymond is currently serving his sentence at the Cheshire Correctional Institution in New Haven County, Connecticut, and will not be eligible for release until September 2053. The parents and fiancé of Annie have expressed that they find the given sentence to be fair. At the sentencing, Annie's mother delivered a heartfelt speech. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that she would never get the opportunity to hold her daughter again, witness her marriage, hear her laughter, or enjoy the presence of her grandchildren. She said goodbye to her child, whom she cherished as the greatest gift from God. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. Growing up, Sophia had a happy and carefree childhood. She was a bright and energetic young girl. Sophia developed a close relationship with her siblings. They were from her mother Michelle's first marriage. When Sophia was around 6 or 7 years old, her parents went through a divorce. This event left a lasting impact on Sophia's emotional well-being, causing her significant emotional pain in the years that followed. Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a mental health condition marked by severe mood swings during her high school years. The condition affected her mood, behavior. Although Sophia received treatment, including medication and therapy, there is no cure for the condition, which posed significant challenges for both her and her family. Bipolar disorder had a profound impact on Sophia's daily life, leading to unpredictable behavior and a chaotic lifestyle. Her relationships were often unstable and those around her struggled to cope with her condition. However, in 2015, Sophia met Austin, a charismatic and optimistic person who quickly captured her heart. Sophia and Austin had a volatile relationship due to Austin's aggression and anabolic steroid use for sports. They argued frequently, sometimes leading to physical fights. Sophia's mental health struggles often contributed to these conflicts. Austin's aggression left Sophia injured several times, requiring hospitalization. When Sophia discovered Austin's affair about a month before the incident, she decided to end the relationship, but they still saw each other occasionally. Sophia persevered through her struggles and continued to progress in life. As a young woman with striking features, she worked briefly as a model for a local company's jeans advertisements, which helped fund her education. Sophia eventually graduated as a licensed massage therapist and landed a job at the Red Door, a high-end spa in a luxury hotel. It was there that she met her 20-year-old co-worker, Spencer Mugford. A beach lover and keen swimmer from Florida, Spencer was hired as a sailing instructor. Spencer and Sophia developed a strong connection due to their shared interests. They started dating, but their relationship was short-lived as their families did not approve of it, mainly because they were often surrounded by trouble. Michelle, Sophia's mother, was particularly concerned about her daughter's well-being as Sophia was frequently meeting Austin, an ex-boyfriend, and drinking alcohol, which had become a regular habit. In the end, Sophia's relationship with Spencer did not work out, and they decided to remain friends. The exact reason for their breakup is unclear, but it seems Sophia may have reunited with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of work. Spencer and Sophia had always been intrigued by the mysterious lighthouse and decided to visit it on the eve of Memorial Day. Their trip, however, ended in an unexplained event. On June 8, 2018, a commercial fishing vessel near the Long Island Strait made a disturbing discovery. The crew spotted something unusual in the water, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a corpse. The fishermen quickly alerted the Coast Guard, who then notified the police. When the police arrived, they recovered the body of a young man from the shoreline and observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body. The deceased was later identified as Spencer Mugford, who, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, had been reported missing just a few days earlier. To understand what led to Spencer's death, his body underwent an autopsy. The results confirmed that Spencer had drowned, and experts did not find any signs of violence or assault. However, some details from the autopsy were kept undisclosed. In the same week that Spencer and Sophia went missing, 2 other men went missing in the same area. Their bodies were later discovered, and like Spencer, they had drowned. Initially, police believed that these incidents were unfortunate accidents caused by adverse circumstances. Remarkably, despite an extensive search, Sophia McKenna's body has not been found. On the night of May 27, 2018, in the small town of Groton, Connecticut. Although the investigation is ongoing, the case remains unsolved, leaving many questions unanswered. The story revolves around Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford, who decide to hike to the New London Lighthouse, located along the Thames River in a location considered mystical by locals. Built in 1909, this historic lighthouse has become famous for claims of paranormal activity involving Ernie, the first lighthouse keeper. According to local legend, Ernie's grief led to his tragic death after he jumped from the roof of the lighthouse following a painful breakup. Since then, locals and visitors have reported many strange occurrences. Mysterious events have included doors and windows opening for no apparent, sheets falling off beds, and radios turning on for no reason. Sailors have also reported mysterious incidents, such as boats leaving the shore on their own. As a result, the lighthouse has become a place of paranormal stories. The following Saturday, Sophia's friend Austin tried to reach her, but his calls and messages went unanswered. Initially, Austin wasn't concerned, knowing Sophia often slept in late. As the hours passed with no response, he started to worry and contacted Sophia's mother, Michelle. Michelle hadn't checked her phone because her younger daughter had been playing with it since morning. When she finally checked, she found 7 missed calls from an unknown number. Michelle attempted to call the number back, only to reach Spencer's voicemail, suggesting that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle attempted to contact Sophia but was unsuccessful. She and Austin then began a search. Austin called nearby hospitals, while Michelle filed a report with the police about a missing person. They also reached out to Spencer's family, who were equally worried since he had missed a significant family event and was unresponsive to their calls and messages. Michelle and Austin visited Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had recently been there. The night before, Spencer's father learned that his son had met Sophia, which made him and his wife worried about the problems Sophia was having. Spencer's mother said that her son had planned to go fishing with a friend. The last time she spoke to Spencer was at 10 p.m. when her son said goodnight to her. Realizing that something was wrong, the Spencer family also reported their son and girlfriend missing to the police around 6:30 p.m. Police began searching for Sophia and Spencer. During the search, Austin contacted the sheriff to share some information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He also told the sheriff that he had seen a video that Sophia had posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, recorded on Spencer's phone, Sophia and Spencer can be seen having fun on a boat, heading towards the lighthouse. The footage shows a young man rowing towards the lighthouse. Everything seems normal. The photo taken before the incident shows Sophia posing playfully in front of the lighthouse with a concrete barrier and a "no passing" sign in the background. However, the events that unfolded just minutes after the photo was taken remain a complete mystery. Photos and videos were posted confirming that Sophia and Spencer were indeed at the lighthouse. This information prompted the police to dispatch 20 different Coast Guard units to the area. An extensive search was conducted by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police, including air, sea, and land searches. The police's first major discovery was Sophia's car parked on a university campus, with her cell phone found inside. That night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had been wearing in the video. Police theorized that Spencer may have used the T-shirt to secure a boat to shore. The search for Spencer and Sophia continued overnight and into the next day. However, a storm soon rolled in, prompting state authorities to temporarily halt the search until new information or clues about the Sophia and Spencer. This decision came as a shock to their families and friends, who refused to give up hope. They took matters into their own hands, plastering the city with posters and flyers featuring the missing duo's pictures. They also appealed to the public for any information that might aid in the search. Despite numerous witnesses in the area at the time of their disappearance, none came forward with any information. The family's private search efforts continued for days, but yielded no answers. Sophia likely chose not to report the incident to the police because she and Spencer had recently had run-ins with the law. Just days before, Spencer had been arrested for drunk driving, and Sophia had been charged with aggressive behavior. As a result, Sophia may have decided that it would be safer to seek help from her mother rather than seek police intervention. It is also possible that Sophia was in a state of panic and was not thinking clearly at the time. Without more information about her situation, it is difficult to say for sure why she made this decision. Police tried to piece together events on May 26, 2018. Memorial Day was coming up. Sophia was not working that day, but Spencer agreed to cover a coworker's shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After work, the pair planned to meet up and attend the city's Lantern Festival together. Their plan was to spend the remainder of the day together, including a visit to a local lighthouse known for paranormal activity, which they were eager to experience. However, what happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. There is no information on who they met or where they went, and it is unknown if they had been drinking. It is known that Sophia's car was parked on the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. Sophia left her cell phone in the car, possibly due to forgetfulness. Sophia's phone was dead, so she decided to leave it behind. Spencer and Sophia took a small sailboat from campus. The boat had no motor and weighed only 14 pounds, with oars as the only means of propulsion, and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating through treacherous rocky shores without safety equipment. That was all the information police had that night. On Monday evening, a police search helicopter spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck in the rocks about 7 miles west of the lighthouse. The boat was covered in dust, indicating it had been there for some time. Although it has not been confirmed, police believe the sailboat may be the one Spencer and Sophia took from campus. Fingerprints found at the scene of the boat were never examined or disclosed to the public, making it impossible to determine if they matched the fingerprints of the missing young couple, Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford. A major obstacle in the investigation was the unavailability of certain key evidence. Spencer's phone was never recovered, and the police did not obtain his cell operator records, making it impossible to confirm if any calls were made to numbers other than Michelle's on the night of the disappearance. Both the lighthouse and the campus have security cameras, but unfortunately they were not working on the night of the disappearance, and therefore did not capture any video of the event. Additionally, a serious mistake was made by the police in not investigating the lighthouse immediately after the couple went missing. To keep the case in the public eye, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page called Searching for Sophia McKenna in July 2018. The page allowed the family to share updates, brochures, and pleas for information with the public. In a strange turn of events, a suspicious message was sent to Michelle from Sophia's social media account requesting money just weeks after the disappearance. This raised concerns about potential hacking, as the police had possession of Sophia's phone at the time. The investigation into Sophia's disappearance and Spencer's death has been closed. Police have been unable to come to a clear conclusion about what happened. On July 10th, a memorial service was held in Sophia's honor, organized by her family and friends. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Diogo Goncalves, born in 1999 in the city of Albura, Portugal, is an only child in a poor but hardworking family. His family made a living mainly from the unstable tourism industry. His parents always considered Diogo a good son. Those who knew him described Diogo as kind, responsible, hardworking, reliable, and very friendly. He enjoyed making friends and was close to his family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown. After graduating, he began studying computer science. To pay for his studies and living expenses, Diogo applied for a job at McDonald's in 2015, at the age of 16. When he was 17, his life suddenly took a major turn when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were trying to cope with his father's difficult situation, another tragedy occurred. Diogo's mother, who had always supported him in his studies and upbringing, was involved in a traffic accident. While she was on her way to work at the shopping mall where she worked as a cleaner, a car hit her, dragging her for several meters and causing her to die from her injuries. Although the driver fled, the police identified him and brought him to court. While Diogo awaited the verdict on the perpetrator of his mother's death, he had to move to a medical facility to receive the necessary care. His aunt, concerned about Diogo's situation, invited him to live with her, but the two had a serious disagreement. After a few weeks, they could no longer live together. Diogo told a friend about his situation, and the friend's parents offered him a room in their house in the Albufeira neighborhood. Here, Diogo was close to friends and people who helped him feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo has shown an excellent ability to handle and overcome difficulties with patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Villa Vita Park, a top 5-star hotel. Diogo's abilities impressed the directors, and they offered him a job at the hotel as a technician. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept the offer and left the fast food chain where he had worked for almost a year as a shift manager. He entered a new phase of his life, envisioning a future filled with opportunities that would help him rise above the hardships he had experienced. After working at the company for a while and contemplating brighter days, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his colleagues, especially a girl he had a crush on, Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old hotel security guard. Maria Malvero was born into a normal family and, like Diogo, has gone through many hardships. Her mother suffered from mental illness, and her father left when she was very young, leaving her never to see him again. Maria, who works in security, became interested in martial arts and started practicing karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer but was rejected by the academy because of her tattoos. This frustrated her, and she decided to join the SEER Info training course, which specializes in training security guards for the private security sector. Diogo has feelings for Maria and has expressed them openly to her from the beginning, but she does not reciprocate and maintains a cold attitude. Diogo is very fond of Maria, so much so that he turns down an attractive job at the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon just because he does not want to be away from her. He often brings her meals while she is on duty. Over time, Diogo and Maria became close, and people around them saw them as a couple, although there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she did not want a relationship with him because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a naval officer. However, she kept in touch with Diogo, causing him to harbor hopes of a future with her. Diogo did not give up hope and always tried to be close to her and please her. One day, Diogo was devastated when he accidentally saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he thought she should have told him that she didn't like boys, which was why they would never be together. Diogo's best friend, Fabio, tried to reassure him by saying that girls sometimes do that, but Diogo didn't believe him and insisted that Maria had lied to him, which was why she refused to be with him. Despite his disappointment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and Maria continued to accept his gifts and invitations to dates. Diogo tried to take her home several times, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to let another man into her apartment. Time passed, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the sum of €70,000, the young man decided it was time to buy a house so that he would no longer have to pay rent. Diogo shared the news of his mother's insurance money with Maria. A few weeks later, Maria decided to quit her job at the hotel. She said that she could no longer bear the comments of her colleagues about her alleged relationship with Diogo. Maria also justified it by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention because of her mental illness. At that time, Diogo had no reason to doubt Maria's words. However, later events showed that her decision to quit her job at the hotel was for darker reasons, and that is when the third character in the story, Mariana, 20, appears. She works as a nurse at the hospital and has a stable relationship with Maria. Maria and Mariana live together at Mariana's parents' house, as they are not yet financially stable enough to have their own house where they can enjoy their relationship. This is exactly Maria's plan when she learns about the large amount of money that Diogo will receive. From that moment on, Maria begins to get closer to Diogo. It turns out that Maria has shared information with Mariana, and together they decide to trick Diogo into gaining access to his bank account data and steal the money he received. The problem arises when one day, after being rejected by Maria several times, Maria suddenly tells Diogo that she wants to spend a romantic evening with him. This was truly a gift for Diogo. He couldn't believe his ears. After waiting so long, the thought of being with the girl he loved made him extremely happy. The meeting was set for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was delighted and had no idea why the girl suddenly changed her mind. As soon as Diogo entered, Mariana gave him the orange juice she had brought herself, but the drink contained an unexpected ingredient, 3 ampoules of diazepam, a central nervous system drug with anti-anxiety and sedative effects. Mariana was the one who suggested using this substance, having stolen the drug from the hospital where she worked. Mariana's plan was to anesthetize Diogo, access his bank information, and possibly manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone lock. Mariana is said to have waited in a car outside the house while her friend carried out the plan. She even texted Maria several times to see if the drug was working, as it took longer than she had anticipated. The situation inside the house became increasingly tense. Diogo did not understand what was happening and began to get anxious. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising to dance erotically, but first, she had to tie him to a table. After being in that position for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became aggressive and began to beat Diogo. Using her martial arts skills, Maria overpowered Diogo, knocked him to the floor, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana, Maria then told her to go inside the apartment, and when she entered, she found Diogo lying on the floor. Mariana asked Maria what happened and criticized her for going off plan. The original plan was just to steal the key and take his money. When Diogo was unresponsive, Mariana performed CPR. However, when he regained consciousness, he became very agitated and tried to attack Mariana. In response to Diogo's reaction, Maria overpowered him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and strangling him again. Diogo lost his life at the hands of the girl he loved. His body was found in Maria and Mariana's living room, and soon after, they began their evil plan. They cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, log into the mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process lasted for several days due to the daily transaction limit at that time. Since Diogo was scheduled to go to work the next day, Maria and Mariana devised a plan to prevent Diogo's co-workers from discovering his absence. Maria and Mariana impersonated Diogo to text one of his co-workers. The colleague received a message from Diogo's number, saying that he would not be able to come to work and needed a replacement. However, this message seemed like an unannounced absence, which was unlike Diogo, who did not like to change shifts, so the message felt strange to the colleague. The colleague then asked Diogo if there was a problem and was told that everything was fine. The conversation with the hotel staff and people close to Diogo continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but these messages were increasingly uncharacteristic of him. On Saturday morning, Diogo's boss received a text message saying that he would not be returning to work because he had met a French woman and was moving in with her. This story seemed very strange to the boss because Diogo was a responsible person and would never quit his job so suddenly. In search of answers, the boss started calling Diogo, but he did not answer. He then received another message saying that he was not well enough to talk on the phone. Diogo's boss replied that he could only calm down if they could talk. He wanted to hear his voice and his explanation for what was happening. The reactions of Diogo's relatives to the messages Maria and Mariana sent convinced the girls to change their plans to explain their boyfriend's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it seem as if Diogo had decided to end his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, about a forensic scientist who kills criminals and evades justice by removing traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After carrying out their evil plot, they stuffed Diogo's body into a trash bag and put it in the trunk of their car. They went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where their hugs and laughter were captured on security cameras. They then went to a resident's house to begin dismembering the victim. Finally, Maria and Mariana placed Diogo's body in a black bag and put the rest of the body in a container. Meanwhile, at Mariana's parents' house, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. They had to wait the required 48 hours to officially declare him missing. Maria and Mariana then left the house. Maria drove Diogo's car to the cliffs near the San Vicente Lighthouse in Cabo. Mariana followed Maria in her car. At around 2 p.m. that same day, Mariana threw Diogo's body off the cliff. She then left Diogo's car nearby. They thought that this way they could make it look like Diogo had committed suicide. Maria had no idea that instead of falling into the sea, the body would get stuck on a rock. They then left together in Mariana's car. They drove about 7 kilometers in 12 minutes to the Inferno Dago waterfall in the town of Tavira, where they threw Diogo's remains into the water. Shortly thereafter, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. According to multiple sources, 2 laptops were found in the car. Police were called to the scene and conducted a search on both land and sea. As a result, the body of a young man was discovered, partially covered by a black trash bag. At the same time, at another location on the coast, a French couple was stunned to discover Diogo's head. Diogo's hands and feet were also found after a thorough police search. Investigators said the circumstances of Diogo's death were strange. He was brutally murdered despite being a quiet person who did not associate with people of questionable reputation. Investigators could not find any hostile forces against Diogo. The police continued to investigate and soon discovered that Diogo had received a large inheritance after the death of his mother. Through the wire transfer investigation, they discovered that a large sum of money had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria. Detectives tracked down Maria to find out why Diogo's money had ended up in her hands. Maria tried to convince the police that she had killed Diogo because he had abused her. Maria claimed that was the reason she had left the hotel before the incident. However, when police examined text messages between the victim and Maria, they found this was not true. Maria said that she and Diogo had become close after she left her job. During her first meeting with the police, Maria claimed that she was the only person responsible for planning and carrying out the shooting. Maria insisted that Mariana had nothing to do with the crime. However, Mariana's testimony contradicted Maria's. Mariana explained that Maria said she wanted to rob Diogo of his money and intended to kill him. Mariana said Maria wanted to make him suffer so that he would give her his bank account password. The evidence gathered by investigators was enough to convict Maria and Mariana. Detectives had Diogo's phone records, cell phone records, and ATM surveillance video. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge followed Maria's account of the events, and Maria pleaded guilty while repeatedly denying Mariana's involvement in the case. She said Diogo's body had been in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and that's where the remains were dismembered. The judge then asked Mariana where she was when Diogo's body was dismembered. It was notable that the joints of the body were separated with great precision. All eyes in the courtroom were on Mariana, who was also a long-time nurse. Mariana answered all the questions and said that everyone knew she worked at the hospital, so they suspected that she was the one who dismembered the body. She further explained that using the internet, the matter could be cleared up. The judge ordered Maria and Mariana to be detained because this was a serious crime under the law. The crime was committed in a cold, calculated, reckless, and extremely cruel manner. A few months later, the trial took place on February 24, 2021. In her testimony at the trial on February 26, 2021, Maria stated that she initially sought revenge on Diogo for his violent behavior but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him. Maria also confirmed that her friend had no connection with Diogo and did not know about the murder. Maria argued that her actions were not motivated by Diogo's money. In addition, Maria and Mariana attended the trial together but avoided looking at each other. It was rumored that after their arrest and imprisonment, they ended their relationship. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, complicity in indignity to a corpse, robbery, unlawful access, fraud, carjacking, and illegal possession of a weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of murder but convicted of desecration of a corpse, complicity, and fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for these charges. However, she was released because the charges she was convicted of did not require pretrial detention until the final verdict was delivered. The court determined that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo showed that she had no intention of killing him. The judge took into account Mariana's confession, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. Despite this, the Portuguese public disagreed with the verdict, considering Mariana as guilty as Maria of the crimes against Diogo. After the verdict, Mariana left the court through the back door, where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting for her. Neither Mariana nor her father would speak to reporters. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Rhonda Casto. Julia Simmons lives with Stephen Nichols, a divorced stock trader, in his 3-bedroom house outside Portland, Oregon. Julia and Stephen met online while she was looking for a place to rent. Julia was impressed by Stephen's charm and kindness. While living together, Stephen met Rhonda Casto, Julia's 20-year-old daughter. Although he is 10 years older than Rhonda, Stephen was attracted to her beauty and admirable personality. Surprisingly, Rhonda also had feelings for Stephen. From there, they began a romantic relationship. As Stephen and Rhonda's relationship became more serious, they decided to live together in Stephen's apartment. During their relationship, Stephen developed a close relationship with Rhonda's family, especially with her 2 sisters, Melanie and Tessa. Tessa, who was 9 years old at the time, was very fond of Stephen because of his fun and playful personality. As the years passed, Stephen and Rhonda lived together but were not married. Rhonda often dreamed of getting married, and her friends knew this. Stephen promised to marry her in the summer of 2009. They had a baby girl, and motherhood became the best thing in Rhonda's life. Her daughter became the center of Rhonda's life, and she cherished every moment with her. She loved being a mother, but also wanted to return to her modeling career. According to Stephen, after giving birth, Rhonda gained a lot of weight and felt unhappy with her body. They decided to hike 25 of the most beautiful trails in Oregon together to help Rhonda lose weight. Stephen said that their relationship was good, they rarely argued and became closer. However, Rhonda's friends told a different story. They revealed that Rhonda had confided in them about Stephen's abuse. Rhonda even took pictures of her back in the mirror to document the bruises Stephen had caused. On March 16, 2009, Stephen and Rhonda, both 23 years old, went hiking together on the Eagle Creek Trail. During the hike, Rhonda took a picture of Stephen using his cell phone. Before leaving, Rhonda jokingly texted her mother, saying, "He's either going to give me a ring or throw me off a cliff. Haha." Initially, the weather was nice. However, Stephen later said that Rhonda began to act strangely. According to Stephen, Rhonda asked him what would happen if something happened to her and if he would take care of their daughter. He replied that of course he would. When the weather started to get worse, Stephen suggested that they go home. Stephen said that Rhonda wrapped a towel around her shoulders, called herself Superman, and ran down the narrow, slippery path. Stephen said he witnessed Rhonda slip and fall about 150 feet down the cliff on the Eagle Creek Trail. Stephen said he went down the ravine where Rhonda fell because he couldn't get a cell phone and held her body. He tried to call 911 but got no signal, so he left Rhonda and walked to the trailhead to contact rescuers. Rescuers then took Rhonda's body away. Rhonda's family claimed that Stephen showed no emotion at the funeral, but Stephen denied this and said that he cried a lot. He explained that when he was really sad, he would pull away from people and want to be alone. Immediately after Rhonda's death, Stephen quickly packed up his and his daughter's belongings and moved to the other side of Oregon to be closer to his family. This move left Rhonda's family feeling suspicious and wondering what had happened between Stephen and Rhonda in the final moments before she died. In 2012, Stephen decided to leave the United States to live with his daughter in China. This decision marked a new turning point in the lives of both father and daughter. Stephen decided to move to Wuxi, a city about 75 miles from Shanghai. He had lived in China during his previous marriage and had developed a deep love for the country and its people. During his time in China, Stephen worked as a teacher of English to Chinese businessmen. His and Rhonda's daughter, Ava, quickly adapted to her new life. Within 2 months of moving in, she was speaking fluent Mandarin. Both Stephen and his daughter are thriving and happy in China. Stephen met and fell in love with Landy Yin. Landy and Ava formed a strong bond, with Landy taking on the role of a mother figure. Stephen appreciated how Landy had stepped in and embraced the role of a parental figure to his daughter. After a year of dating, Stephen decided to take the next step in their relationship by proposing to Landy. He was very happy when she said yes. In February 2015, Stephen and Landy returned to the United States to prepare for their wedding. They decided to have 2 wedding ceremonies, one in the United States and one in China, to accommodate both families and friends. Stephen and his daughter arrived in the United States the day before Landy. When they got off the plane in San Francisco to transfer to Oregon, Stephen was approached by police and informed that they needed to arrest him for baggage issues. Stephen had no idea that this would lead to a series of events that would change his life forever. Within minutes, the police separated Stephen from his daughter. Little did he know that while he was in China, detectives had been investigating the death of his ex-girlfriend Rhonda. The suspicious circumstances surrounding Rhonda's fall from Eagle Creek prompted them to continue their investigation, and they eventually concluded that Stephen was responsible for her death. Rhonda's mother was instrumental in keeping the investigation moving forward. She regularly contacted the detectives to keep them updated. The police arrested Stephen at the airport for Rhonda's murder and took him back to Oregon. When he was arrested, Stephen claimed that he thought he was dreaming. Stephen hoped to open his eyes and find himself back home in China with Landy. However, this was not a dream, but reality. Stephen's bail was set at $2 million. He was jailed for 14 months awaiting trial. The judge reduced Stephen's bail to $250,000, which his attorney paid. Stephen was released on bail but must wear an ankle monitor. When Rhonda's family learned of Stephen's arrest for murder, they were overjoyed that justice had finally been served. Rhonda's mother, in particular, was overcome with emotion and burst into tears upon hearing the news. Stephen's arrest brought relief and comfort to Rhonda's family, who had been grieving her loss for years. After Stephen's arrest, his legal team conducted an investigation at the Eagle Creek trailhead where Rhonda died. Their goal was to conduct tests that would prove to the court that Rhonda's death was the result of a slip and fall accident, not Stephen's pushing her. During a preliminary hearing, Rhonda's autopsy revealed that all of her injuries were below the waist. This finding became a key element of Stephen's defense strategy, providing the basis for arguing that Rhonda committed suicide, not murder. Stephen's defense argued that Rhonda's pelvic injuries were caused by the impact of her fall. They argued that the evidence showed that Rhonda fell feet first, not somersaulting, suggesting that she had been pushed. In addition to presenting evidence of Rhonda's injuries, the defense also wanted to introduce notes from her therapy sessions as additional evidence. The notes show that Rhonda was depressed but never suicidal. Rhonda also described her relationship with Stephen as lacking love. Stephen's defense attorney argued that Rhonda's depression and the way she described the relationship were signs that she was suicidal. They introduced this evidence to cast doubt on the claim that Stephen pushed Rhonda to cause her death. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had attempted suicide multiple times before they met. Rhonda's family denied these allegations and said Stephen was lying. They accused Stephen of blaming Rhonda for her suicide to cover up his crimes. Stephen also claimed that Rhonda had been abusing drugs since she was 12 years old. According to the medical examiner's report, Rhonda used only small amounts of marijuana and prescription medications to treat postpartum depression and anxiety. This contradicts his claim that she abused multiple substances. During the preliminary hearing for Rhonda's murder, a shocking revelation was made. Stephen, in his early 30s, had been having an affair with Rhonda's 16-year-old sister, Melanie. This came as a surprise to many due to the significant age difference between them. The prosecution argued that this inappropriate relationship may have been the motive for Stephen's murder of Rhonda. They believed that Rhonda had discovered her husband's behavior, leading to tension that may have led Stephen to kill her. After being arrested for Rhonda's murder, Stephen was indicted on 5 additional counts of sexual abuse against Rhonda's sister, Melanie Casto. Specifically, 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault and 3 counts of third-degree oral copulation. While awaiting trial for the 2005 murder, Stephen pleaded guilty to 2 counts of sexual abuse. He signed a statement admitting to having sex with Melanie Casto on 2 occasions. However, Stephen later claimed that he was coerced into confessing and that his confession was untrue. Stephen explained that he only confessed because he believed doing so would allow him to fight and have a chance to regain custody of his daughter. Stephen claimed that he wanted his daughter back and felt desperate. However, the state pointed out that the relationship between Stephen and Melanie had lasted for more than 4 years. Stephen later admitted to having sex with Rhonda's teenage sister, Melanie. The state presented evidence in the form of a text message from Rhonda to Melanie. In the text message, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of trash and accused him of using Melanie to hurt her. This occurred before the fateful hike at Eagle Creek, where Rhonda died after falling. Rhonda's mother claimed that her daughter knew that Stephen was trying to drive a wedge between the 2 sisters. She added that Rhonda loved her sister and wanted to mend her relationship with Melanie. The state concluded that Rhonda and Stephen's relationship was not as amicable as Stephen claimed. The court received additional evidence of Stephen's past sexual misconduct. Just 6 months after his daughter's mother died, Stephen was arrested and charged with 5 counts of sexual abuse of a 13-year-old girl. Although he initially denied it, Stephen later admitted to sending sexually explicit text messages and nude photos to the victim. He pleaded guilty to 1 count of sexual harassment. During the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor presented photos of bruises on Rhonda's back. Rhonda's best friend testified that she had heard Rhonda and Stephen arguing on the phone on multiple occasions. This evidence suggested that the relationship between Stephen and Rhonda was abusive. In addition to the photographic evidence, the court heard testimony from Stephen's ex-wife, who alleged that in November 2003, Stephen tried to strangle her and throw her over the balcony of their 5th-floor apartment. However, Stephen was not charged and denied all charges. For their part, Rhonda's family firmly believes that Stephen, her boyfriend, is responsible for Rhonda's death. Police suspect he killed Rhonda to collect her life insurance. Her mother said Stephen had lost a lot of money trading stocks the previous year and was struggling financially. In addition, people who knew Rhonda said she loved her 9-month-old daughter very much and could not have killed herself by jumping into Eagle Creek. In May 2017, Rhonda's family was shocked to learn that the state had reached a plea deal with the defense attorney. Stephen pleaded guilty to manslaughter based on criminal negligence. Although he believed he killed her, The lack of physical evidence that he pushed her off the trail in Eagle Creek made the case weak. Stephen was given credit for time served while awaiting trial, but was given 3 years of probation. After removing his ankle monitor, Stephen was released. Rhonda's family and friends said Stephen's plea deal was unfair and that he deserved a harsher sentence. During the sentencing hearing, Rhonda's sister gave an emotional statement. She expressed anger and frustration towards Stephen, saying that he had destroyed their family and caused immeasurable pain. Rhonda's mother also expressed confusion and grief, unable to understand how Stephen could have taken her daughter away from her and torn their family apart. Stephen insisted that he did not force Rhonda, but accepted the deal because the time limit for regaining custody of his daughter was about to expire. He said that he was willing to take responsibility for his actions for the sake of his daughter. However, Rhonda's family and friends still did not believe Stephen's explanation. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made a shocking statement about Rhonda's fate. According to Stephen, on the day of Rhonda's accident, when he walked down the Eagle Creek Trail and found her, Rhonda was still alive. The interviewer then asked Stephen if he had put Rhonda out of pain that day. Stephen responded by presenting a hypothetical scenario of mercy killing. He argued that such an act could be considered justifiable homicide, although it would still be murder. Although Stephen did not directly admit to harming Rhonda, his comments implied that he was involved in her death. In 2017, Rhonda's mother filed for Social Security benefits for her niece, Rhonda's daughter, Ava. She claimed that her niece lived with her and promised to use the benefits to care for the baby. However, the state alleges that from April 2010 to December 2014, the time Rhonda's mother claimed her niece lived with her, the child actually lived with her biological father, Stephen. Rhonda's mother is accused of stealing nearly $40,000 from the government over a 5-year period. Her defense attorney argued that her actions were motivated by a desire to prevent Stephen from gaining custody of Rhonda's daughter and from benefiting from Rhonda's $1 million life insurance policy. According to the attorney, Rhonda's mother's goal was to protect her granddaughter from being taken advantage of. They also pointed out that she had a history of depression, which became worse after her daughter died. To cope with the pain, she used marijuana as a way to self-medicate. The defense argued that her use of the drug impaired her judgment and thinking. The judge sentenced Rhonda's mother, 53, to 1 month in prison and 3 years of probation after she pleaded guilty to welfare fraud. In addition to the sentence, she was ordered to repay $39,100 in stolen benefits. Rhonda and Stephen's daughter was placed in foster care in October 2015 after the Department of Human Services stripped them of parental rights. The decision came after Stephen pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. The Oregon court eventually stripped him of his parental rights. However, Stephen has appealed the decision. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 4 from Bardstown, Kentucky, was known for her strong devotion to her children. She and her ex-husband Keith shared custody of their children. Despite the divorce, she maintained a friendly relationship with him for the sake of the children. At the time, her 2-year-old youngest son was with her current boyfriend, Brooks Houck. On July 5, 2015, Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, became worried when Crystal didn't respond to her phone calls. Crystal was a reliable and responsible who always responded to her calls, but this time Crystal was unresponsive. As the hours passed, Sherry's worry intensified, and after 24 hours without hearing from her daughter, she realized something was amiss. Sherry's instincts as a mother told her that Crystal's absence was unusual. She tried contacting Crystal multiple times, but her efforts were in vain. Sherry then reached out to Crystal's friends and family, hoping someone might know where she was, but no one had seen or spoken with her recently. Around the same time, Crystal's younger sister Brooke contacted Sherry, informing her mother that she too had been unable to reach Crystal. This makes Sherry even more worried and insecure. Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, told her family that he had not seen her since Friday. He last saw her playing games on her phone before he went to bed. When he woke up the next morning, Crystal was gone. Brooks suspected she might have visited her cousin's house for the 4th of July celebrations. However, Crystal's mother, Sherry, became increasingly worried as she couldn't reach her daughter. She reported Crystal missing to the police department. While she was there, her son Casey received a call from a friend saying Crystal's car had been seen on the side of the road. This news alarmed Casey and his father, Tommy Ballard. They knew Crystal wouldn't voluntarily leave her car. When they arrived at the location, they found her car with a flat tire. This only deepened their concern, as they knew Crystal would have asked for help if she had car trouble. Casey and Tommy were puzzled as to why Crystal would stop the car to fix it herself. When they looked into the car, they noticed that Crystal's keys, phone, and wallet were still on the passenger seat. This discovery made them even more worried, as Crystal was not someone who would leave her belongings behind. The fact that her personal belongings were still in the car made her disappearance seem even more suspicious and unusual. After discovering Crystal's car on the Bluegrass Parkway, her father and brother immediately contacted the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found no signs of struggle, but one thing caught their attention: the driver's seat was positioned in a way that would have been uncomfortable for someone of Crystal's height, suggesting that someone else may have driven her car. The authorities continued to investigate and asked for help from potential witnesses. However, no one came forward with any useful information. The police then decided to use the media to appeal for public assistance in finding Crystal. They released her photo and asked for the public's help, but unfortunately, no one provided any significant leads. Tommy, Crystal's father, arranged search parties to find Crystal. The hot and humid weather made the searches challenging. Despite a large turnout, Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, was absent. This made the police suspicious of his attitude. He seemed unconcerned about her disappearance. When questioned by detectives, Brooks provided an alibi, stating that Crystal and their young son had visited his family's farm the previous evening. They supposedly returned home around midnight, after which Brooks went to bed. He claimed Crystal stayed awake, engaged with her phone, playing games, as was her habit. In the morning, at 7 a.m., Brooks said their son was in bed with him, but Crystal was gone. Crystal's family initially suspected she might have gone out with her cousin. But those close to her dismissed this idea since she would never leave her 2-year-old son behind. Crystal's younger sister, Brooke, believed Crystal was planning to leave her partner, Brooks. According to Brooke, this was because Brooks had been dishonest with Crystal and lack of emotional attachment. Crystal told her mother, Sherry, that she wanted to leave Brooks. She said one of the main reasons was his controlling behavior towards her. Casey, Crystal's brother, had recently witnessed tension between Brooks and Crystal, including several heated arguments. The police asked Brooks to come in for questioning and take a polygraph test, but the results are not clear. Afterward, Brooks participated in a formal interview with the police. Detectives obtained video footage confirming details of Brooks' story. A video showed his truck entering the family farm, and later footage showed the vehicle leaving the property around midnight. However, because the windows of Brooks' truck were dark, police were unable to identify the occupants at the time. Brooks spent time at his parents' farm doing chores and setting a fire to burn some building materials. After for the fire to die down, he drove home. During a police interview, Brooks was questioned about a brief 13-second phone call he made to Steve Lawson, a business associate, while driving home. Brooks offered to have Steve explain the call to the police and asked him to call them during the interview. Steve claimed he called Brooks to get some phone numbers for a rental property, but Brooks said he needed to get home first and ask Crystal, who handled such matters. However, the police found Lawson's explanation suspicious, as it seemed rehearsed. The police were puzzled by this response, considering Brooks was with Crystal at the time of the call. They questioned why Brooks couldn't simply hand Crystal the phone, allowing her to discuss the issue immediately, rather than waiting to talk to her in person later. During Brooks's interview, his brother Nick, a Bardstown Police Department officer, called him with urgent advice to leave the interrogation room immediately. The police had doubts about their initial theory that Crystal had abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway and ran away. Instead, they suspected that something had happened to Crystal while she was at the Brooks family farm. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance progressed, several people reported seeing Brooks's truck and Nick's police car at his family farm to the police. This led detectives to believe that the brothers might have been at the farm to dispose of evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. To learn more, the police brought in Brooks's brother, Nick, for questioning. They confronted him with eyewitness accounts placing that him at the farm on July 8 and asked him to explain his emergence there. Nick initially claimed he had no knowledge of the incident surrounding Crystal's disappearance and denied being present that night. The police continued questioning him, directly asking if he and Brooks had tampered with or hidden evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Nick strongly denied any involvement and assured them that, as a police officer, he would never aid in covering up a crime. The police then asked Nick to submit to a polygraph test, which he agreed to. However, he failed to answer truthfully to two key questions: whether he knew Crystal's current location and if he was withholding information about her disappearance. Despite failing the polygraph test, Nick insisted that he was telling the truth. On October 15, investigators identified Brooks as the primary suspect in Crystal's disappearance. The same day, Brooks's brother, Nick, was terminated from the Bardstown Police Department for interfering with the investigation. Although the police were pretty sure they knew who the culprit was, they didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. The police were concerned that if they took their suspect to court without sufficient evidence, the suspect might be acquitted. If that happened, they couldn't charge the suspect with Crystal's murder again, due to the double jeopardy law. To help find more evidence, the FBI, Kentucky law enforcement agencies, Crystal's friends and family, volunteers, and missing people organizations conducted thorough searches at the Brooks family farm. The lengthy search left her loved ones terrified and desperate for news. As the search continued, her family remained hopeful that she would be found alive and well. At the Brooks family farm, investigators searched the ashes of a fire and, although they did not find any human remains, they did find pieces of clothing. Unfortunately, they were unable to link these clues to Crystal's case. The police executed multiple search warrants at the Brooks family farm, focusing on their cars and residences. However, these searches failed to yield significant leads for evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. A $100,000 reward was offered for any information that could help find Crystal, but unfortunately, no one stepped forward with any tips despite this large incentive. Tommy, Crystal's father, took it upon himself to investigate his daughter's disappearance, following every lead he received, no matter how small or insignificant it may have seemed. His determination was unwavering, driven by his love for Crystal. Unfortunately, Tommy had already faced a devastating loss in his family. In January 1979, his pregnant sister was brutally murdered by her husband and his accomplice. The perpetrators shot and beat her, set her remains on fire, and scattered them on a farm. Although it took years, the suspects were eventually arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to life in prison. Tommy remained committed to finding out what happened to his daughter Crystal, despite the many challenges he faced. He conducted his own investigation, canvassing the neighborhood, conducting interviews, and reaching out to anyone who might have information about his daughter's disappearance. To aid in his search, Tommy also utilized his own savings to hire private investigators and cadaver dogs. To keep track of the investigation, Tommy carefully documented every clue he found. He worked with the police, sharing his discoveries and asking for their advice. November 2016, Tommy took his 11-year-old grandson, Crystal's son, on a hunting trip on their property early in the morning. As they left, Tommy's wife Sherry watched them go, feeling uneasy. She couldn't help but pray for their safety in the woods. Sherry tried to calm down after they left, but her peace was short-lived. Just minutes later, she received a frantic phone call from her grandson, Crystal's son. His voice shook with fear. He then exclaimed, "Mimo, Papa has been shot." Sherry's world came crashing down. Her nephew's panicked voice on the phone told her something terrible had happened. She quickly threw on some clothes and rushed to call 911, and she reassured her distressed grandson that help was on the way. Her mind was flooded with fears of what might have happened to her husband, Tommy. When Sherry arrived at the scene, she witnessed a horrifying sight: her husband lying on the ground, unresponsive. Distraught, she rushed to his side and tried to wake him up, hoping he would respond. But her efforts only revealed a grim truth: blood was pouring out of his nose. The officers and bystanders at the scene quickly pulled her away so that the medical team could try to save him, but it was too late. Tommy was pronounced dead. The initial police reports suggested that Tommy's death was the result of a hunting accident. However, Sherry knew this could not be true. She was adamant that her husband had been murdered, and she made her feelings clear to the authorities. "This is no accident," she insisted. "This is she husband, and it's a murder, and you know it." During the investigation, the investigators was found that Tommy's own gun had not been used, making it unlikely that he had committed suicide. The investigators then determined that Tommy's 11-year-old grandson was not involved in the shooting. As the investigation progressed and more facts came to light, Sherry's suspicion that her husband's death was indeed a murder gained credibility. The Kentucky State Police have informed the public that they are treating Tommy Ballard's death as a murder. The Tommy family believes that he was killed because he was getting close to discovering what happened to his missing daughter, Crystal. They think the people responsible for Crystal's disappearance felt threatened by Tommy's investigation and had him murdered to prevent the truth from coming out. In 2022, the FBI conducted a 5-day investigation into Crystal's disappearance. Investigators returned to the Brooks family farm to search for more evidence, with the goal of gathering enough information to hold suspects for Crystal's disappearance accountable. In October 2022, the FBI confirmed that it would analyze all evidence collected at its lab in Quantico. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance continued, the Kentucky Attorney General appointed a special prosecutor to help prosecute criminal charges related to the deaths of Crystal Rogers and her father, Tommy. Crystal's mother, Sherry, was aware of and fully supported the decision to appoint a special prosecutor. She believed the move was necessary to ensure justice for her husband and daughter, and she viewed the appointment as a positive development that brought new perspective and expertise to the case. The decision to appoint a special prosecutor also showed that the case was being taken seriously and that those responsible would be held accountable. On September 2023, authorities arrested Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Houck, and charged him with murder and tampering with physical evidence. The court set Brooks bail at $10 million and prohibited him from contacting Crystal's family members. Notably, Brooks was previously arrested in 2022 for multiple traffic offenses and was released after paying a series of fines. When Brooks was arrested for Crystal's murder, many in Bardstown brought a sense of relief. While the confirmation of Crystal's death was devastating, the community was relieved to know that justice was being pursued, bringing some sense of closure to the case. 1 month after his arrest, in October 2023, Brooks appeared in court for the first time, though virtually rather than in person. The judge inquired if the special prosecutor, Shane Young, was investigating other cases related to Crystal's case. The prosecutor confirmed that they were looking into the death of Tommy, Crystal's father, and suspected a connection between the two murders. Notably, Shane Young believed they had obtained the gun used to kill Tommy. The firearm was reportedly purchased from Nick, who allegedly used an alias during the transaction. Preliminary investigations revealed that the caliber of the rifle matched the one used in Tommy's shooting. Shane Young stated that they were examining the gun based on 5 key criteria. So far, the results have matched 4 of these criteria, suggesting a possible link between the firearm and Tommy's murder. Crystal's grandfather felt relief when the special prosecutors, Shane Young, connected the 2 murders in court. They hoped for a swift and fair outcome in both cases. However, when questioned about the allegations by Shane Young, Brooks and Brooks' mother refused to answer any questions. During the court hearing, the prosecutor alleged that the Brooks family had secretly recorded the grand jury proceedings. The prosecutor claimed that several family members Brooks were involved in this activity. Brooks' attorneys requested that the Nelson County judge be removed from the case, citing bias. They claim that the judge has had a hostile view of Brooks since 2017. The attorneys also argued that the $10 million bail is excessive and should be reconsidered. Attorneys representing Brooks argued that having a biased judge hear the case would be unfair to him. The lawyers argued that the judge's previous statements and actions showed that he was unfair. They asked the court to remove the judge and quickly appoint a new judge to ensure a fair trial. The Kentucky Appeals Court has recently made 2 key decisions. Firstly, Brooks will remain in jail with a $10 million bond. Secondly, the court has denied a request to remove the judge presiding over Brooks's trial. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masney. On October 20, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherry Papini. Keith Papini and Sherry first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherry eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherry realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children and lived in Reading, California. To care for her children, Sherry left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherry Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Normally, Sherry was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherry might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherry had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherry had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherry's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff's office acted quickly and treated Sherry's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherry's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherry's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherry. In their investigation, police examined Sherry's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherry and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherry's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherry, investigators found several messages on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's location. He reported meeting Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event. Although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts, he did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherry to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherry as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherry might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherry went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherry. The officers were relieved to find Sherry alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherry to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherry's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherry was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherry, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by two women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherry, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherry stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherry left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherry said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherry's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherry reported that her captors, two women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherry felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherry also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherry's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherry. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherry described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherry heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherry into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherry off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherry carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherry's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, this has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherry has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherry's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherry's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherry's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherry Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherry's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherry's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherry's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherry. James stated that he had dated Sherry about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry. He said he was involved in Sherry's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherry had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherry the next day. Sherry stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherry isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherry occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherry started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherry asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherry asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherry informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherry then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherry described, involving 2 Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherry had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherry and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherry had faked her own kidnapping and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherry remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherry and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry shared a secret with Keith. Sherry told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherry chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherry and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherry might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherry that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherry's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherry on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also discovered that Sherry's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherry continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherry's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherry's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherry apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherry's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ben Rennick. Ben Rennick was born in August 1987 in Missouri. He grew up in a rural area with his family, including his older brother Sam, with whom he was very close. In 1989, the Rennick family moved to a picturesque farm. There, the two brothers enjoyed the outdoors, and it was during this time that Ben developed a passion for snakes. In September 1992, a tragic incident occurred for the Rennick family. While they were away, a gas leak caused an explosion that destroyed their beautiful home. As a result, the family was forced to move into a trailer. Later, Ben's mother, Kim, was diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. Despite the hardships they faced, the Rennick family remained united and supported each other through every challenge. After previous hardships, the family moved to a new house in 2002. Here, Ben was given a room to raise snakes. In 2009, after a long battle with cancer, Mrs. Kim passed away. Before she died, she asked her sons to promise to continue taking care of the farm and pass it on to the next generation. With an endless passion for snakes, Ben founded the company Rennick Reptiles, which quickly gained wide recognition. Thanks to this, he was able to export snakes to many countries around the world, from the UK to Japan. Snake breeding became his passion and purpose in life. He was known as an excellent breeder, dedicated to his work and more concerned with his love for snakes than profit. His reptile farm successfully bred and propagated many species of reptiles, from common species to some of the rarest in the world. The value of Ben's reptile collection was enormous. The snakes in his collection alone were estimated to be worth over $1 million. However, Ben felt lonely and wanted to have a family. In 2010, at a party, he met Lindley, and they quickly developed a relationship. Just a few weeks later, Ben introduced Lindley to his brother Sam and Sam's fiancé Eli. Both Eli and Lindley had children from previous relationships, which made it easy for them to connect and become friends. Lindley quickly integrated into the Rennick family and moved in with them. She helped Ben take care of the snake farm. They fell in love and lived like a real family, although they were not officially married. In March 2012, Lindley gave birth to a baby girl named Amelia. Ben was very happy to be a father. However, their happy family life once again encountered difficulties. Frank Rennick, Ben's father, faced serious business difficulties. Before that, he made several illegal stock trades to pay for Kim's medical and treatment expenses. The day before the FBI was scheduled to come to investigate the farm, Frank committed suicide. His death put an end to the investigation. Frank's sons once again faced the pain of losing a loved one. Ben inherited the house and farm, while Sam received a sum of money much larger than the value of the house. Although each had their own families, they lived together as one big family in their parents' house. Sam did not hesitate to use his inheritance to renovate the farm, demonstrating the bond and solidarity between the two brothers. Initially, the relationship between the two brothers was quite good. However, financial disagreements soon caused a rift. After their father passed away, Ben focused on his business and family. He decided to marry Lindley on April 14, 2014, officially making her a member of the Rennick family. Later, Lindley and Ben opened a new business together, Essentia Spa Incorporated. However, the business managed by Lindley encountered financial difficulties. Ben and Lindley often argued about financial issues. Although Lindley worked very hard, her income was still not enough to cover the salon's expenses. Meanwhile, Sam and his wife were also having financial difficulties. Ben allowed Sam and his wife to sell some of the furniture in their house to raise more money, but Lindley did not agree with this decision. This incident led to a conflict between the two families, causing serious damage to their relationship that could not be repaired. Ben decided to improve his family's finances by selling some rare reptiles at a high price. However, this plan failed due to a serious incident at the farm. On June 8, 2017, Lindley entered one of the warehouses and found Ben lying motionless in a pool of blood on the floor. Panicking, Lindley called her brother Sam and the emergency services for help. She reported that she had found her husband lying unconscious on the ground. During the conversation, Lindley dropped the phone and ran away. Sam continued the call and confirmed that his brother had passed away. He suspected that the cause of death could be a snake bite. The Montgomery County Sheriff was called to a snake farm for the first time in many years. Law enforcement officers were nervous about entering the farm, which housed more than 3,000 snakes. They were to examine a man lying in a pool of blood and were on guard against a possible attack by a venomous viper, which was initially believed to have caused the victim's death. When police investigator Dave Colbert arrived at the scene and examined it closely, he discovered a shell casing on a shelf at eye level. This discovery suggested that this was not a snake bite, as initially thought, but a more serious homicide. The shell casing was found near Ben's body, but no weapon was found. The killer had shot the victim multiple times in the back and head. Remarkably, no one in the family heard the gunshots or saw the attacker. Sam and Lindley were summoned to the sheriff's office for questioning. Lindley suspected Sam of being involved in her husband's death and provided a clear motive that Ben wanted to sell the house, but Sam was adamantly opposed. To clarify the matter, Sam was asked to take a lie detector test, which he successfully passed. The police released Lindley and Sam because there was not enough evidence to hold them. An investigation into the motive for Ben's murder was launched. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, but this theory was not confirmed, as all the rare snakes and valuables were still intact at the scene. Just a few days after Ben's death, the police questioned Lindley. They tested her hands and clothes for gunpowder, but the results were negative. After her husband's funeral, Lindley cut off contact with Sam and Eli. She sold her husband's company, inherited the house, and filed a $1 million life insurance claim on Ben. After receiving the insurance money, Lindley decided to sell the Rennick family home for $740,000. The Rennick family was told they would have to move. Sam began to suspect his brother's wife of being involved in Ben's death when he discovered that the insurance claim was settled quickly and the family business was sold shortly thereafter. Sam shared his suspicions with the investigating authorities. As a result, Lindley was brought in for further questioning. During the interrogation, Lindley admitted to having a complicated relationship with her husband, Ben. She also revealed that she occasionally met another man named Eric. However, Eric was ruled out as a suspect because he had an alibi. What was shocking was Lindley's confession that about 3 years after marrying Ben, she had been having affairs with at least 2 other men. Text messages between Ben and his wife showed that he suspected her of having an affair, causing tension in their relationship. On October 5, 2017, the Missouri Highway Patrol administered a lie detector test to Lindley, which she failed. However, due to a lack of concrete evidence in the case, she was released. Although progress has slowed, the investigation into Ben's death continues. A report of police reports shows, a month before Ben Rennick's death, Lindley made her first attempt to kill her husband. She fabricated a story about Ben being an abusive husband who regularly abused and beat her. Lindley told this story to a coworker at the spa, hoping to gain sympathy and support. Investigators discovered this after Ben died. Lindley Rennick and her accomplice conspired to kill Ben by mixing 15 Percocet pills into a protein shake. Ben drank the shake without realizing it, making him seriously ill for a while, but he eventually survived. Ben had no idea he had been poisoned. Investigators subsequently questioned Lindley 6 times about the incident. A surprising breakthrough in the investigation occurred on January 14, 2020, when a key piece of information was revealed from a state prison. A witness named Brandon Blackwell claimed to know about Ben's death. Brandon told Missouri State Highway Patrol investigators that Lindley was the one who shot Ben and that she had conspired with her ex-boyfriend. Brandon revealed that he and Lindley had been having an affair while she was still married to Ben. A year and a half after Ben's death, Brandon and Lindley had a child together. However, they broke up in 2019. Brandon claimed that Lindley had admitted to him that she had been having affairs, specifically with Ashley Shaw, a co-worker at the spa where she worked, and Michael Humphrey, another ex-boyfriend. Years after Ben's death, Lindley and her ex-lover Michael Humphrey were arrested in connection with Ben's death. However, after their arrests, both blamed each other. The question remains, who really killed Ben? According to Michael's testimony, on the day of the incident, he accompanied Lindley to the farm. Lindley asked Michael to pretend to be the buyer and wear gloves. Although initially assigned to shoot Ben, Michael failed to do so. In the end, Lindley took the gun and shot her husband to death. The investigation into Ben's death lasted 3 years. By January 16, 2020, authorities had issued arrest warrants for 3 suspects, Linley, Michael Humphrey, and Ashley Shaw. Ashley was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation in the case. She testified in court against her former employer. The former spa employee revealed that Linley had been complaining about her husband and had convinced her to join in on the scheme. She told that Linley claimed that Ben had been demeaning, insulting, and even physically abusive to Linley. Fearing that she would lose custody of their children after the divorce, Linley decided to get rid of her husband, Ben. She and Michael conspired to poison Ben with a lethal cocktail. When questioned, Linley and Michael blamed each other for Ben's death. In October 2021, Michael Humphrey appeared in court in Ine County. His attorney hoped that revealing the murder weapon would reduce the charge to second-degree murder. Although Michael had the gun involved, no conclusive DNA evidence was found on it. To get his sentence reduced, Michael cooperated with prosecutors by revealing the location of the murder weapon. As a result, he was convicted of second-degree murder, a lesser charge. On January 3, 2021, no plea was entered, and Michael was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Linley's trial began on December 6, 2021. She was charged with fatally shooting her husband, Ben, on June 8, 2017, at his snake farm in New Florence. According to court records, the plan to kill Ben began at Linley's spa. According to the statement, Linley may have made up the story about domestic violence because she feared that Ben would learn of her financial difficulties and take away her children. The first time Linley attempted to kill Ben, she tried to spike his protein shake with narcotics. The trial detailed the day of Ben's murder, replaying the entire sequence of events through cross-examination. On the day of the murder, Michael picked up Linley at the spa. Ashley also used Linley's phone to send text messages from inside the spa, creating false evidence of their location and misleading the investigation. According to court records, Michael intended to kill Ben but asked Linley to do it. After the shooting, Michael tried to collect all the shell casings but missed some in his haste. He then returned to the spa and threw away Linley's clothes after she showered, in an attempt to remove gunpowder residue from her body and clothes from the day of the murder. Defense attorney Catherine Barrer asked Linley to share her personal and family history, her education, her relationship with her ex-boyfriend Michael, as well as her work history and the events that led to her marriage to Ben. The lawyer presented Linley as a victim of domestic violence. However, no evidence of such violence was found, which weakened this defense. Michael was part of a group accused of planning to kill Ben. Linley described her relationship with Michael as complex and codependent, involving Michael's drug dealing and her drug addiction. According to witness testimony, Linley ended her relationship with Michael in late 2010, but they reconnected about a month before Ben's death. Linley denied the prosecution's allegations of planning to kill Ben, including trying to poison him with a protein shake laced with an addictive substance. In court, Linley admitted to having affairs with several men and expressed deep remorse. When considering divorce, she did not know who to turn to for advice. As her father was divorced and held strong views on divorce and adultery, Linley wanted support when talking to Ben, so she contacted her ex-boyfriends, which led to her reconnecting with Michael. During the trial, Linley admitted to participating in her husband's death and concealing Michael's involvement. She said the reasons were marital problems, including arguments, allegations of abuse by Ben, and stress related to his snake business. Fearful of Ben's reaction to the divorce, Linley brought Michael to the farm on June 8, 2017. She claimed that her intention was to file for divorce, not to harm Ben. Linley said that she took Ben's trash to throw away, then went into the nursery and saw Michael and Ben washing their hands. She did not hear their conversation because she was focused on thinking about how to talk to Ben about the divorce. Linley recounted in a trembling voice how Michael pulled out a gun and shot her husband. She screamed and ran outside, hearing several more gunshots. Shocked and panicked, She only remembers staring at the trees as Michael ran up and pushed her toward the car. When she returned to the snake farm, Lindley discovered Ben's body. She called Ben's brother, Sam, and they checked to see if Ben was still alive by checking his pulse and breathing. Lindley expressed regret for not telling the police right away that she was there with Michael and for not telling them what happened. Due to suspicions of her involvement in her husband's death, the $1 million life insurance policy Ben had purchased long ago could be contested. Lindley has waived her right to the money. Ben became the beneficiary of a trust fund after his father's death. The assets belonged to Ben and his children, not Lindley. However, Lindley received the money she contributed to the trust fund, along with her daughter's scholarship. Lindley admitted to seeking support by sharing her story with her then-boyfriend, Brandon Blackwell. However, the relationship ended shortly after Lindley gave birth to Brandon's child. At trial, Lindley expressed regret for repeatedly lying. "I was just trying to avoid the truth of what happened," she said, and insisted she never wanted her husband to die. Following the final verdict, Lindley's defense team did not file a motion for a new trial. No appeals have been filed against her conviction. However, Lindley filed a defamation lawsuit against Blackwell, claiming that his statements about her involvement in her husband's death were false. However, prosecutor Kevin Zellner questioned Lindley's testimony during cross-examination. He asked why she did not check on her husband after hearing the gunshots, why she did not call 911, why she sent friendly text messages to her husband and Michael after the shooting, and why she continued to lie even after emergency responders were involved. Prosecutor Kevin portrayed Lindley as a clumsy but ruthless mastermind in the murder. Lindley admitted to suggesting that police consider Ben's brother, the victim, as a suspect. During the trial, Kevin criticized Lindley's coldness in accusing the deceased's brother. During the sentencing hearing for second-degree murder and armed criminal action, Lindley broke down and cried but still did not admit her guilt. On December 9, 2021, Lindley, 33, was convicted of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 13 years in prison for the murder and an additional 3 years for the armed criminal action. In total, Judge Kevin Crane sentenced her to 16 years in prison the following January. Sam and Ben's family were furious about the sentence. They believe that both Michael and Lindley deserve life in prison, as they are as guilty as their co-defendants. Sam expressed deep disappointment and surprise when he realized that in Missouri, a human life is only valued at 13 years in prison. Ben was a promising young man. However, due to the actions of a woman, he and Sam fell into an awkward situation, causing irreparable damage to their relationship. Despite this, Ben continued to live a dignified life. He became famous for his talent in breeding snakes and even created a new species of snake named after him.